Hi, everyone. This is Lindsay DeMoose, licensed marriage and family therapist, and this is Check In, Not Out. Welcome, everyone. A little bit about me, as well as being a licensed psychotherapist in life. I'm also an on-site support person at Sharp Chula Vista. As many of you know, my title is the Stress First Aid Navigator. Within this role, I get to do so many things under the umbrella of employee support services through use of the Stress First Aid model, which all of this includes being able to provide education on things like stress management, recovery from challenging situations. I get to help connect you to resources. And of course, one of the main things that I get to do is to help you build resilience within the challenging work that you do. So I've lately been trying to think of a way to be able to provide much more comprehensive support services to you all outside of things like an in-person or virtual group-based offering. And I thought that a podcast actually would be an easy way for you to be able to receive tips and tricks to manage your stress on the go, on demand, as they say, at your convenience. Rather than me scheduling something and getting people together, it just seemed like this was like a really great way to be able to reach a lot of people with minimal effort on your ends. Launching this has been a different story on my end. This has been a fantastic labor of love. My goodness, I have such a newfound respect for people that do podcasting. I get why this is a full-time job, by the way. As it relates to all of you, this is just meant to be something that you get to listen to in either bite-sized pieces, something that you can keep coming back to. This is really a gift to you all, first of all, for the amazing work that you do, but also this is my way of being able to support you in a much more accessible solution. This is information that's translated from my psychotherapist brain to you so that you can have a resource for managing all things related to stress as healthcare providers. So for some of you, that might be stress within critical care situations in healthcare, or stress related to home life, other aspects of life, etc. Just being human, right? Without further ado, I'm going to kick off the series by talking about the basics and the namesake of the show, Check In, Not Out, which this really speaks to how easy it is for life stressors to cause us to check out. And I'm always here to check in with you anyways, as well as to help you check in with yourself. And so that's what this episode is really about, is the importance of checking in with ourselves. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is one of, if not the most vital tools that you need in your toolkit. I will certainly teach you fancier tools, and I will teach you how to be able to really develop your skill set of knowing yourself, knowing how to manage your stress, knowing what to do in particular situations. But as far as I'm concerned, like, this is really the foundation for your resilience. So all of the other tools that I will teach you can't be executed without this particular tool. So you really need to know how to check in with yourself, what to do, and then you'll have other options as we continue to grow this offering. So this is a tool that I basically use every day for myself. Doesn't mean that I use it routinely, but just either within the course of like the stressors in my life, the course of doing the work that I do. This very much comes from my knowledge and awareness about the Stress First Aid model in general. And I take the concept of checking in both from the 7 C's of the Stress First Aid model, as well as the mental health continuum. So this is something that you all see is any of my branding, the green, yellow, orange, and red emojis, right? That's the mental health continuum. So lots of you know that I use this either formally, informally. Informally is always more fun when I'm just checking in with you all and rounding with you on the units. But formally is certainly something that comes up within this role where I'm following up with you after a difficult situation. I'm checking in with you on something that I know is happening outside of work. This is a routine process for me. This helps me to understand what's going on, what you need, and what I might be able to do to help. So this all comes from a particular skill of knowing the value and the fluidity of checking in with ourselves. So before I get into the skill itself, why is checking in with ourselves so important? Well, like I said, this is the foundation. So why is it the foundation? First of all, we don't always know what's going on with ourselves. We might be super attuned to things. We might, practice mindfulness. We might practice breathing. We might practice something else. But we are human. We go through difficult times. We don't always have this really primed awareness of the connection between our bodies and our minds. So furthermore, you all go through really difficult things in this field, right? You don't always know what you're coming into work with. You don't always know what you're leaving work with. And furthermore, you don't always know how that spills into the rest of your lives. So, like I said, we kind of forget sometimes that our mind and bodies are connected, and that being in a challenging situation, even if it doesn't feel stressful at the time, that situation might be impacting us anyways. It might be impacting us down the road. It might be building a layer of something that ends up being more of a bigger deal than we realize. There's a myriad of different ways that stress can affect us. Now, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, whether it's here at the hospital or outside in my private practice or in my role as a professor, where unbeknownst to them, or even in my personal life, where unbeknownst to them, they're stressed, they're not handling it well, they don't know why they're making decisions that they're making. They don't know why they can't sleep. They just don't know what's going on. Now, I might know that they're stressed because I have an objective perspective that's more unbiased and less emotionally based, which is the hard thing for all of us within ourselves, is that we're in ourselves. So we're really not able to see things from a bigger picture, especially when we have emotions that might be getting in the way. So if I have an outside perspective, then I might be able to see more of a connection between someone's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And certainly I would want to help make that information something that they're aware of. But the point is that we don't always get what's going on with us. We might just see different pieces, but not the whole picture. So maybe if you're experiencing, like I said, sleep issues, if you're experiencing just an ongoing level of irritation or irritability, and you're like, oh, why am I like this? You're just feeling disconnected. You don't even have to be experiencing big things like, shutting down, freaking out, having panic attacks, making a bunch of unideal decisions outside of your life. Stress can affect us in minimal ways, and it can affect us in really significant ways. The point is that it's important for us to check in with ourselves as soon as we have an awareness that something's off. As soon as we get that we're not acting like ourselves, that we're not reacting like ourselves, checking in helps us to be able to see this, name what's going on, and do something about it so that it doesn't get to a worse point. That's the idea of this. This is why it's so important. It also allows more cohesion within our lives, that we can understand why stress in one situation affects us in other areas of our lives, why we take things out on people. This happens all the time. Why we make decisions that either keep us stuck or end up making our stress worse. All of this stuff. Stress is like this golden isn't the right word, but it's this thread that gets woven into the fabric of our lives that is so important for us to be able to just recognize. So I had, maybe in a more significant type of example, I had a client in my private practice who was getting these panic attacks, like totally unexpected. She'd be at work, going to sleep, just really seemingly out of nowhere. And she didn't understand what was going on. She didn't understand why she was getting panic attacks. Her disposition and mood in general is always pretty sunny. And so she's like, I don't get where this is coming from, but they would be debilitating. And she was never really attuned to her body. She wasn't attuned to the connection between her mind and her body. She was not attuned to how a challenging situation at work that was ongoing and like a growing difficulty in her relationship, she did not understand where that was living in her body. And what we figured out was because she wasn't able to check in with herself and recognize, like, hey, this is a tough situation that I'm going through. This is really difficult. This might affect me down the road. What do I need to do to relax? What do I need to do to ask for help? Because she wasn't able to do this, again, because she didn't understand, she didn't know, no fault of her own, she was having panic attacks. So I get that that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but this is an example of what this can look like if we don't have this greater awareness and if we don't act, right? So for me, I check in with myself, like I said, pretty regularly, but I don't necessarily do it routinely. I check in with myself maybe on the way to work if I notice that I'm feeling irritable, if I'm feeling tired, uncomfortable, or anxious. I also check in with myself like immediately if I am acting disproportionately to my husband and being a biatch to him for no reason or a disproportionate reason. Like the other night, he made me dinner, and oh my gosh, this is gonna sound terrible. He made me dinner, and it was a delicious meal that ended up making the kitchen very messy. I'm talking like, because we were deep frying stuff, like oil everywhere. I was slipping on the floor because there was so much oil everywhere. This is the first time that we had made these flautas, and they were delicious, but I couldn't even enjoy them because I was so overwhelmed by the state of my kitchen. Now, I really like a clean kitchen. I appreciate a clean kitchen, but usually I don't shut down to this degree. So as soon as I was able to like get a hold of myself and center myself back to a present moment, I was like, what is going on? And then I realized I was so stressed and overwhelmed about a bunch of different things. And the last thing that I wanted was to be stressed and overwhelmed and then have to spend an extra hour cleaning up my kitchen. My husband does a great job in a lot of ways. Cleaning is not necessarily his strong suit. So while we usually have an agreement that whomever cooks doesn't have to clean, to me in that moment, it was just too much to deal with. And so that is a marker for me to be like, look, Lindsay, like what is going on? You've got to figure this out. What's happening? Because why are you reacting this way to this poor man who is making you a delicious meal? So when things are unbalanced, incongruent, to me, that's my cue that I need to stop and check in. Anything that feels off, that changes the way that I think, that I feel, that I act, that is my indication that I need to stop and check in with myself. Okay, so what does checking in with ourselves actually look like? What do we do? How do we do it? So when you check in with yourself, it can be a multi-part process, but it's, again, bite-sized, so I'm going to make it easy. So first of all, you can check in with yourself routinely. I'll talk about that in a minute. Or this is more common. You can check in with yourself PRN. So if you're checking in with yourself PRN, you usually check in with yourself in response to, like I said, something off or feeling uncomfortable in some way, right? So if you're anxious, if you're worried, if you're angry, and that anger is coming out of nowhere seemingly, if you're reacting to in a specific way in an otherwise innocuous situation, just as soon as you know that something's off, that's your cue. Time out, stop, check in, okay? So when you're doing that, so you're recognizing that something's off, the next step is taking a moment to be in the present. So you're stopping, slowing down, you're present with yourself, you're present with your body, with all that's happening around you, all that's happening for you. So as I say, this is where we're going to stop, be in the present, and we're going to zoom out. We're going to look at ourselves from a bigger picture. So checking in with ourselves asks, very simply, how am I doing? what's going on with me right now? Why am I acting the way that I'm acting? What's happening in my body? Why might I be stressed? Where am I feeling any tension in my body? If we don't always know the content of why we're stressed, sometimes tuning into our body is a good way to get our foot in the door, because we can't always name things, but we got to find something that's off, okay? So, furthermore, you could ask, what are my thoughts right now? What have my thoughts been like? Where is my mind in general? What is happening with me where I think I might be responding to this particular situation in this way? When we do that, most of the time, if we slow down, we take some time, it comes to us. Now, if you're not used to doing this at all, this might be the practice, is just really being more attuned to these pieces as they're fitting into place for you, okay? So whenever you can identify this, coming up with like, what's going on for me, that is so important, because this next step is being able to name it. Just lean into what's happening. There's no judgment, just recognizing, oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I'm worried about something and I haven't been dealing with it, and this is how it's coming up. Or I'm really sad about something. I'm angry about something. I feel out of control in this area of my life. We need to let that awareness come up and name it. What emotion are we feeling? That's usually such an indication of how we're stressed, and such a way to be able to attach our feeling to a behavior. Like, it clues us in to that connection between what's going on within our minds, what's going on with our bodies, and why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. So once we name what's going on, this is the next step. Once we name what's going on, then we can have a potential direction or action that we can take. So if I'm tired, then do I just need to catch up on sleep? Now, I understand if you're a parent, that may not be that easy. If you don't have control over catching up on sleep, I think, I'm realizing as I'm saying this, if you're a parent and you're tired, you are probably very good about recognizing that you're tired. So forgive me if I'm insinuating that you don't have awareness of that, because I'm sure that that unfortunately is a given, especially if you have young children. So there may be something that you can do about that or not. If we're anxious about something, if we're stressed about something, if we're feeling overwhelmed, we can ask ourselves, do I need to do anything about this to manage it right now? Do I need to do anything about this in particular? Can I just give myself a moment to take some deep breaths and tell myself that I can get through this? Now, I think if you're that parent that's tired, that's probably going to be your ticket, is being like, I just need to recognize that this is what's happening again. Just take some deep breaths, sit with this, and just remind myself that I can get through this. Now, for me, I don't have kids. Lots of you know this, so I can't continue to really normalize that from my own experience. But shifting gears for a second, if I'm stressed, usually it's because I have too much on my plate. I say yes to a lot of things. They're all really fantastic things, but they can all pile up and need to cash in all at the same time. And so usually that's where my overwhelm comes from. When I'm overwhelmed and stressed because I have this happening and then the next day I have this happening and this happening, I usually can't do anything about that. Usually I just have to remind myself I'm doing the best that I can do. This is time limited, so it's going to end. And the most important thing for me to do is remind myself that I'm going to get through this, that I don't have any control other than putting one foot in front of the other. And that while it feels overwhelming now, it's going to shift. That stress is going to shift and I am going to feel differently. And I think that that's a really important thing, regardless of what you're going through, to remind ourselves that most things are temporary. Most things are time limited. Most things really will pass. But if I don't know that that's the case by way of forgetting that, or I've disconnected from that and I'm making decisions that keep me more stressed, then it's not going to be temporary. I might develop greater issues as far as like having more pronounced anxiety. I might make choices that give me more stress down the road. The point is that being present, being able to recognize and name what's going on, for lots of reasons, this helps us to remember that eventually we're going to get through something. We just need to slow down and walk through it for the time being, rather than doing things, ignoring it, building other stuff up that end up piling up for us later down the road, right? Another way to say this is having a reaction that makes this situation even worse. The analogy that I use is having a flat tire and slashing the other three. So sometimes we really just need to name it, ask ourselves what we need to do. If we need to do something about this, I'll get to this in the next step. But other times it's like we just have to accept that this is what's happening and walk through this. Now, if we need more than just naming it, if we need more than just recognizing this, be like, oh, okay, this sucks right now, but I'm going to get through this particular thing, then it's a question of like, what do we need? Do we need to take any action? Do we need to talk to somebody? Do we need to get something off of our chest? Do we need to ask help from somebody? This is vital, and we often don't give ourselves permission to do this. On that note, do we need to give ourselves permission to do something that might seem like we don't have the motivation or the energy to do it now, but if we play the tape forward, might be so much more helpful in the future? So for me, sometimes like asking for help is just so tough, not necessarily because of my pride, that can get in the way too, but more so it's because I just don't have like the energy or like the attention span to like stop and like delegate something. But every time I do ask for help, oh man, I feel so much better. It's like, why didn't I just do this sooner? So talking to someone, asking for help, just asking someone to contain what they're hearing from us without necessarily having to give us a solution, getting this out might be super helpful. Even setting a boundary, whether it's setting a boundary with myself or yourself, or setting a boundary with others. Maybe you need to talk to me in real life, or maybe you need to talk to a counselor, a therapist, somebody from your church, somebody from your family. It's like almost like we need a decision tree of like, how am I doing? What's going on? Why is this happening? Do I need to do anything about this? If I do, what can I do? What are my options? It might not even be talking to somebody. It might be like, I got to get out of my house, or I got to go exercise, or maybe I just need to like eat differently so that not only do I feel better later on, but I feel better after my meal. I think lots of us can relate when we just stress eat, right? So we want to take stock of what's happening, identify what action we can take if there's something that we need to do. But usually it's like, hey, let's move a muscle and change our thoughts. Let's get out of this funk. And how can we do that? What do we know is going to be helpful? And I'll say, what do we know is going to be unhelpful? How does doing what we think we want to do in the moment because we don't have the energy, because it feels the most comfortable, whatever it is, how is that actually going to keep us stuck or make things worse in the future? Pardon me if I'm repeating any of this. But this is, sometimes we need that reminder and just to continue to like play this forward and get a bigger picture of what this can look like. So one other idea. Now, if you want to do this continuously, this can actually be super helpful. I had a client last week that talked to me about every time that she gets in her car after work, she checks in with herself. It's like 2 minutes. She does like a quick mind scan, a quick body scan. How am I doing? How was the day? Do I need anything? When I get home, do I need to talk to my partner? Do I just need to like go to the couch and, as she says, eat snacks and ask for back rubs, which I think is so adorable? It's like, what does she need? Sometimes it's like, you know what? This is not a situation that's going to change. I'm actually going to be okay. I just need to get through this. And other times when she checks in with herself, this is what's so important to remember about doing this routinely and getting ahead of things. Is there are lots of times where she's like, you know what? I'm good to go. I'm just a little tired or I'm just a little overwhelmed, but that's going to shift. There's nothing that I need to do other than just continuing to get through whatever I'm getting through or just keep existing. So I think that that's a great practice. Now, if you are not prone to checking in with like recognizing when something's off or checking in routinely, what I'll say, and this is like a PRN to a PRN, is what I call the inception trick. Okay. So the trick here is to find an everyday activity that has a potential to be annoying, to get in the way, to cause you stress, but doesn't always do it. And use that to check in. So for me, the bathroom right next to my office on 2T, the hand dryer or the paper towel dispenser, the sensor is off, and whenever it gives paper towels, it gives like 2 inches of a width of a paper towel. So most days, I'll wave my hand over the sensor and I'll wait and I'll have to get another one. Most days, that's just what happens. I don't get frustrated. I don't get irritable. Like, I just know that that's what's going to go down, and it does, and I'm not surprised. And then I go about my day. Now, when I start to notice some sort of discomfort, irritability creeping up while I'm waving my hand over that sensor and I'm waiting for that little minuscule sheet of paper towel, that's when I know I need to check in with myself. So pick something, whether it's getting your kids ready in the morning for school, coming home and seeing the state of your house. I'll stop speaking for my some of my examples. Getting out of your car, driving to work, like what's an everyday thing that you don't that will just be a potential for a reminder, and how can you use that as an opportunity to just recognize, hey, how am I dealing with this? Am I fine? I'm good to go? Or this is actually bugging me more than it usually does. That's your cue to check in. Okay? So that's the skill. This is what it looks like. I want you to try it. You don't have to be perfect on this. You don't need to try it every day, but this is going to be, if I don't teach you anything else, this is going to be such a fundamental practice because it really opens your eyes to what's going on. You'll have a better knowledge of yourself. You'll have a better knowledge of how the pieces of your life make sense together. And then you'll have a better knowledge of what you can and might or need to do about all of those things. All right, I hope that this was helpful. Please keep me updated. Let me know how this or any other tool that we talk about goes for you. I love hearing different questions that you have. I love being able to tailor different educations to your actual needs. That's what makes the most sense and really is the most relevant. So give me as much feedback as you can. I love it. I love it. I wanted to close by letting you know that I think that you're valuable, that you're worthy. I know you can do difficult things, and I'm so happy to be able to support you through the process. And I never thought I would say this, but please like and subscribe so you can be updated for different episodes that I post in the future. Take care, everybody. Thanks.